You're listening to The Business Focused Photographer. If you're ready to transform your photography business into a thriving career, you're in the right place. Each week, we'll discuss fun and innovative ways to boost your creativity and income. Sound good? Let's go.
All right. So today I am talking with Rachel Utain-Evans. That is the name of her business. She is a photographer, but she's so much more than a photographer. She is based in the Philly area. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, for those of you who might not know what Philly is. I think everybody knows where Philly is, though, right? And Rachel is a birth photographer, but she's also a doula and videographer. So I'm really excited to talk to you today, Rachel, because when I asked my listening audience, like, who would you like to hear me speak to? I had several people say birth photographer. And I'm like, yeah, I would like to speak to a birth photographer too. But the place where I like to start is to have you introduce yourself and give us your origin story, because most people have an origin story when it comes to their business. So, and I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah. I love my origin story, actually. So I have all the classic, like, I've always loved photography. I did it as a hobby. I never studied it formally, but like I would take a class here or there. I started actually in film photography, like old school darkroom, developing my own film, the whole shebang, just completely fell in love with it.
Yeah.
But I am very like classic, type A oldest child. And so in my head, art was not a job. It was a thing that you did for fun on the side. And like a job was a real thing that you made money and had benefits and all of that kind of thing. And after college, I worked in the nonprofit world for a few years, and I was in nonprofit management. I was pretty good at it. I did it for a while, and I was in this, I kind of felt this crossroads moment in my career coming of, okay, so either, I'm pretty good at nonprofit. I should either go back to school, maybe get like a master's in social work or something like that. Or, I always kind of had this nagging thing, but like, I really love photography. Like, couldn't I maybe just do that? No, that's not a real job. And I kind of kept fighting between those two things. And while I was in the middle of trying to make that decision, two really big things happened within about a week of each other. I found out I was pregnant with my first child, and I found out that the nonprofit that I worked at had lost funding for my position. And I took that as a pretty clear sign from the universe. And I thought, okay, This is the most practical way that I could think of to try being in business for myself. Because leaving a job to go, have no health care is a much more scary thing than saying, well, I just don't have a job now and I'm pregnant, so I'll take the year. I'll see if I can make this work. And if the business thing isn't working by the time the baby comes, I'll go look for a new job. And that baby just turned 12.
I love that. That is awesome.
That's the very short version, because obviously there's a lot of bumps along the way. I've had more children since then. We've had lots of life things happen. I also have a very supportive partner in my husband who does have kind of a more classic job with benefits, and that definitely made it a lot more possible for me to chase this dream. But I really have never this was the thing that I was supposed to be doing, and I didn't realize it until the universe kind of pushed me over the cliff to figure it out.
Yes. Yeah. I like, we have a similar-ish story where it was like my contract had ended and I would have to reapply for my job. And then my husband, he was my boyfriend then, got a job. I don't know. It was like some crazy amount of miles away. It was 5 hours away. So we were moving. And I was like, okay, well, this is my chance to pivot. And I like that you pointed up that it was because of, with his support, with your partner's support, having a supportive person in your house to kind of like hold, just have that safety net for you there.
Oh my gosh. And that, like, the privilege of having the time and space to build your business the way that it makes sense for you, and not purely like, okay, but we need to pay the mortgage and we need to get food on the table. That's definitely part of it. And that's definitely a big part of, my why for the way that I run my business now. But, I was able to figure that out in a very organic way while taking time to have babies and, flexing things in the way that made the most sense for our family, knowing that,
Yeah.
it wasn't purely based on my income that we were depending. So
It makes an enormous difference because when you can take those risks without risking your family's well-being, like the risks are always what gives you the opportunity to take a giant step in your business. It's always, or anything in life. It's like the risk is what you need to level up. And without the safety net there, it was the same thing for me. And like we went down to a one income family when I started having children, and it just made more sense to have me at home with the kids. And I remember I was like, okay, now my job, aside from figuring out how to start a business, I can also find ways to save our family money in so I remember like calling our insurance company and saying like, I don't commute to work anymore. Can we save any money on our policy and canceling cable and like all these like little things that I thought like, let me find a way, because I wanted to make it work too. And and then, then 10 for me, it's 10 years later and it worked. So I love that. And I hope that it's encouraging to people who are in that stage right now of like taking that leap without the parachute and like, you can do it. You can do it.
Sacrifices that everybody makes, when we were in those kind of first couple of years of being new parents and everyone says you can't expect your business to make a profit for X number of years. And those X number of years overlapped with the first couple of years of us having very young babies and, life had really taken a big shift. So, we definitely cut back on a lot of things and learned about budgeting and all of that kind of stuff.
Yep.
But the really gratifying payoff was building the life that made the most sense for us. And it's been wonderful.
It is wonderful. And the thing, you can't make a profit for whatever the statistic is. It doesn't necessarily apply to us. It is, I think that's more for businesses with like, not that I was I was not very profitable, but I don't think I was in the red ever. I think right from the start, because like, what was my overhead? I think my camera at the time was like $800 and a $200 lens. And like, that was my overhead. And I had not invested in any software. It was all free, everything. And my other overhead would be like the spools of CDs for delivering the photos.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So Tara, so like that was my overhead. So it was like, okay, like I can stay in the green here. I can keep, and then of course now my overhead is like $25,000 a year somehow. I really managed to let the pendulum swing in the other direction.
Yeah, and being in the green means something different for everybody. There are people who, are running a business and it really isn't the thing that their family is depending on. So any money that they make is just kind of gravy.
Right.
And there are people for whom their business is what is, whether or not they can pay their mortgage. So it spans the gamut for sure.
Yes. Yeah. Well, all that to say, we're a lucky group to do this and only do this. Yeah. But you are a little bit.
I was going to say,
even when it's hard,
it's a thing that I love to do. Like it's still a job.
Exactly.
Excited to do, and when it's challenging, I'm excited to kind of figure it out and,
to figure it out. That's like that's where I think a lot of the creative parts of the business are overlooked. And like, it's not just when the camera's in your hand that you're being creative or editing. It's like problem solving and coming up with new ideas and strategies and things like that. I love that creative part of the whole thing. It's good stuff.
The way I try to explain it to people is like, when you were in kindergarten and they would say like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And kids would be like an astronaut, a firefighter. I refuse to give just one answer. I was like, but there are 7 things that I want to do, and I will do one every day of the week. And like, I have always been that way. And it wasn't until I started running my business that I was like, oh, this is what I meant. Because when you run a business, you are 7 different things every day, and every day looks different, and you always have to think on your feet, and you have to learn how to be a web designer and a bookkeeper, and being a creative to a lot of people from the outside seems so luxurious because you just get to make art for a living, and then it's you have to explain that it's about 10% of what we do. Like, creating art is amazing, but then we have to also, do marketing and do graphic design and do like all of these things that are behind the scenes and are a lot less glamorous than just, going out and kind of creating something. So
it is. It's like there's always these big shifts in whatever's going on in the world that kind of like inform how we're going to run our business, and then like we have to adapt to them. And it's like I think that's why a lot of photographers also have ADHD. I think like I know I do, but yeah, like everybody's like, oh, it's like, oh, this is why I do this. Yeah, because it's like you're just constantly trying new things, and like you don't have to just like settle on to one like monotonous task every day. It's I love it. I love it.
I really struggle with focusing on just one thing at a time.
Yeah.
But I figured out a way to make that an asset, at least in my life, and not a
hindrance. Exactly. Yeah. You just like, you got to like harness whatever the flow is that day and like jump on it. Like I could never be like, and Monday's social media day and Tuesday's editing day. I'm like, I'm too like impulsive. Like I'm like, I get it all done. It's just not regimented.
I can only imagine if I tried to do that, and then something would happen on Monday, and I wouldn't get the Monday thing done, and then it would and that happens all the time. I'll make a plan for what I hope to get done on a particular day or week, and then life happens, and you have to be able to roll with it. So
yeah, that's the fun of it, though.
I was gonna say that's part of the fun.
Yeah.
Fun. Like I obviously describe to my husband all of the time what my days are like and what my challenges are, and he'll listen so nicely, and at the end he'll just go, yeah, no, that doesn't sound good to me.
What does he do?
He's an accountant.
Oh, so that's wonderful to be. That's like being married to a mechanic.
Yeah, we're very yin yang in that way. We like complement each other very well, but he very much is happy to go to an office and know that he has things to do, and then he comes home and then gets paid every other week.
And that's nice.
It's not. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I miss that sometimes. That kind of reliability and predictability.
I know.
Can be really comforting. But I did the office work thing for a while, and I'm much better at this.
Yeah, when you are in charge of like whatever of getting the work for yourself and then generating it and the income and all that, it's just it can be a little hamster wheelish, you're like, okay, and this is like, I'm always doing this. There's no laurels sitting. Like you will not be doing that. You gotta like, do you have a plan? No.
You always have to figure out how to make the hustle work. And that's tiring sometimes.
Yes. It can be. Yeah. But it's a job at the end of the day. It's a job. And even like the worst parts of it are still so much better than working for somebody else. At least for me. At least for me.
For me,
like
this was the right place to be. For other people, this would be terrible. So I'm glad that we all, and again, I feel so lucky that I was able to find where I fit best in the world and where I can serve people and use, the way that my brain works to the most benefit.
Yeah, because it seems like a pipe dream. If you were to like implant this idea like back in your guidance counselor's office when you're in high school, like there's like we don't have a pathway for running your own photography business, let alone a birth photography business or family photography business.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Growing up, to me, jobs were just a thing you didn't like to do.
Yes.
And you had to go do it every day to make money, and then you came home and complained about your job. That's what was like. That's what was demonstrated for me as a kid. And what's so funny now is, so my kids have both. I mean, my husband's very good at what he does, but it's an office job. It's not the most exciting.
It's still
thing.
a job.
He doesn't have like a passion for accounting.
Right.
Kids kind of are seeing demonstration of both types of career paths, and one of the most interesting things that came out of the pandemic for us, because the kids were home all of the time, so they got to see a lot more of what I do at home when they're normally at school. And I remember having this conversation with my daughter, who was struggling to get some sort of homework done or something, and she was just saying like, oh, I just don't want to do this. And I'm like, everybody has a part of what they do that's not the most fun part and that just needs to get done. Like in my job,
Yeah.
I don't love marketing. I don't love balancing books. I don't love, a lot of the things that I have to do, but I do them so that I can do the other things that I really love. And
Mm-hmm.
her mom, I forget how old, I think she was like 7 at the time, that she was like, there are things about your job that you don't like? Like, it blew her mind.
It's like
Because
shocking.
all she sees is that I'm like happy running around, loving my
Yes.
job. And even
Right.
when I have
Right.
to, leave in the middle of the night to go run off to a client or something, and my kids, oh, we're sad that you're leaving. And I'll say, like, I'm really sad that I won't be here with you, but I'm also really excited to go to this job. Like, I'm excited to go work.
Yeah.
I never like
Yeah.
being away from you, but I'm happy to go to my
Mm-hmm.
job. And that both
Yeah.
of those things can be true at the same time is hopefully
Mm-hmm.
something they'll carry with them. So,
I think it absolutely is. It's like, it's a nice, healthy model of like what life can look like to be a parent or just to be a part of the family or to be in a partnership or
and
anything
have
like that, where it's like,
responsibilities and,
yeah,
all of that sort of thing. So, and I
yeah,
also try to remind them also, my daughter's she's in middle school now, and she's starting to be like, well, when I grow up, I'm going to be this, this, and this. And a lot of what she's really passionate about is creative work, and I'm going to be this type of creative and that type of creative. And I always try to just like slip in there every once in a while and remind her, like, you also don't have to make money with your creative passion. Like, it is also
yes, yeah,
totally fine to get a
mm-hmm,
job that is just good enough and then make art just for yourself. Because there
exactly,
is also, once you decide to turn your passion into your work, you have to keep the love of it alive so that it's not just like, oh, I have to go to work. And that can be really challenging too. And I want to make sure she knows that she can keep her
yeah,
creative things sacred for herself, and they don't always have to be the thing she does for money.
exactly. Well, that is like, I am like exhibit A there, where I don't dislike like actually photographing things.
Yeah.
But my motivation to like take my camera out when I'm not working, it's like it's not there.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's like I'm not doing that, and the like for me, it's like the transition from like leaving my house to go to like have to go and do something. I'm like, "Ugh, I don't want to do it. Once I'm shooting, I love it. I have so much fun doing it, and then like looking at everything that I just did, I love all that. But it's like
Yeah.
for me, I think like the passion is just like entrepreneurship. I love, I love all that. That's like my creativity thrives there. And like I consider myself like an average photographer, but with a successful business because of business prowess, like, but because I can, because of that strength of mine. So yeah, it like monetizing your passion can be dangerous if you want it to stay your passion. Because once you're doing
A lot of
commissioned work and
Yeah. And a lot of creative
it's
people
somebody
don't
else's
have
vision.
business training, and so they kind of get sucked into thinking like, I'm gonna be an artist for a business, but they don't have enough preparation for what the business side of it is going to look like,
Yeah.
and that can
Yes.
suck the joy out
Yeah.
of it.
I'm reading The E-Myth right now, which is like one of those canons like that you're supposed to read when you're in business. And I'm finally getting around to reading it, and it's great.
Okay.
The E-Myth is did you read it? It's E stands for entrepreneur. So that's the myth. The myth is that the entrepreneur is this all encompassing thing, but really it's 1/3 of what you need to be an entrepreneur. So you have like the entrepreneur who's like the creative, the visionary, the ideas person, the strategist, all that. And then there's the manager who does like the things that I suck at. I absolutely suck at anything managerial in my job. So like
Okay.
the bookkeeping and like delegating and everything like that. And then the technician, which is the photographer piece, like that's the person who can do the thing that we're selling. And like finding a balance between all three of those things, like you're coming into business because you're a great photographer. That's a very small piece of the equation.
Yeah.
So yeah, you like figuring out how to strengthen those other two muscles so that you can stay in business is
Yeah.
that's the secret. And I still have not. Yeah, I haven't finished the book, so I don't know what the solution is yet. Maybe
You'll have to let me
next
know
time
if
we
there's a
talk.
secret at the end.
Yes. Yes. Okay. There's my tangent for our conversation. I will tangent so much if we let me. But I want to hear about. So I understand now how you ended up with this business, but you are an exotic bird even in the world of photographers, in that you're a birth photographer. And when anybody takes a minute to sit down, what that means to actually have to be a birth photographer, it's not just, oh, and I have a birth on Thursday and I have another one on Monday. It's like, that's not it at all. It's, I would say, like, more demanding than being a wedding photographer. I would imagine like prices are on par with wedding photography because of the on-call aspect. But you said you have children. Is that when you were like, I don't just want to be a photographer, I want to be a birth photographer? Tell me about that. Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, it was definitely part of it. So my family photography business started 13 years ago. My oldest is 12, my middle is about to turn 10, and both of those births for me were relatively traumatic experiences. Just, and I'm happy to share what those were like, but I was really struggling with, what I thought birth was going to be like before I experienced it for myself, and then how those experiences played out. And around that time, I stumbled upon birth photography just as a consumer through the International Association of Professional Birth Photographers, which runs an international birth photography competition every year, and all of the images that are submitted get published in this huge website, and a lot of them get picked up on different media outlets and things like that. And that's when I actually was first exposed to it. And just as a viewer, getting to see literally hundreds of photos of birds from all over the world in all different settings and all different situations completely blew my universe apart and opened up the world of possibility to me as a person who's giving birth of, oh, here's this huge spectrum of normal that I fall along. My experience was not abnormal by any means, but look at all of these other versions of normal that are out there. And I am a big believer that if you don't know that you have choices, you don't have them. And I did not know that I had all of these choices. I did not know that there were all of these ways to give birth and all of these different options and things that you could ask for. And it made me imagine for the first time a different way of giving birth for myself. And that was just hugely transformational. And for my own personal journey, my third birth was my healing kind of, the culmination
Your
of
redemption birth.
my redemption birth, which again,
yes,
nobody really has control over that. You don't really know how a birth is going to come out, but even the provider that I chose, where I chose to give birth, how I was treated, how I felt just going into labor was enough. Like, even if I had ended up with an unplanned C-section and complications, I was still being treated in such a way that it healed all of the things that had bothered me from my first two pregnancies. And it did happen to turn out to be this incredibly beautiful, perfect home birth, and everything, all of the things that I wanted came to fruition, but some of that is luck. That's birth. You don't really know what's going to happen. But the fact that I had a midwife that I got to know for a year and who I loved and trusted and felt safe with, and she, in some of the most simplest ways, empowered me in ways that I did not even realize that I needed. Very early in our relationship, when I first decided to hire her, and I would say something like, well, when you come to deliver the baby, and she would just stop me right there and say, I am not delivering your baby. You are. I am there to help. And just that simple shift of narrative was everything. She did everything to shift the power back onto me, which is where it should be, because it's my body and my birth and my experiences and my choices. And she is who I hire to help me have a safe delivery, not who I'm hiring to come and have birth happen to me, which is what I had felt like had happened the first two times.
Yeah.
So anyway, so that's how I found birth photography as a viewer. And I had been a photographer for, for so long at that point, and I just felt so drawn to it. And again, as a very type A oldest child, I thought, well, let me do this in a very orderly way. And, before ever stepping foot at a birth, I knew I took it so seriously, and I took it as such a huge responsibility and privilege that anybody would ever invite me into their birth space. And so I set a goal for myself. I said, I want to do 3 births. And ideally, I would love to see a home birth, a birth center birth, and a hospital birth. I will try that. And if I feel like it's not for me, then that'll be it. I'm never going to be a person who doesn't show up to the birth and doesn't fulfill, what my family is expecting of me. Like that. I had heard horror stories of birth photographers not showing up. And so I just knew that was never going to be me. That's a red line I will never cross. So I reached out to my existing client base at that point, and I said, hey, I'd like to give this a try. If you know any friends who are pregnant who might be interested, please send them my way so we can chat. And, things all kind of fell into place where I got a home birth, a birth center birth, and a hospital birth.
Oh, wow.
After my very first birth was a home birth of who is now a very dear friend of mine who actually just lives right across the street. And we met through some mutual friends. Hers was my very first birth that I ever went to. And from that very first one, I was like, oh yeah, this is for me.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Immediately hooked. But I will say, I think the birth that really solidified it for me was the third birth so I went home birth first, then I got to go to the birth center. My third was at the hospital, my client is now also a good friend, lives in the neighborhood, our kids have gone to school together. But when we met, we talked on the phone. She said, I'm really interested in what you're offering, but here's my story. I had an unplanned, very traumatic C-section with my first delivery. I'm still healing from, what I'm carrying from that birth. I'm going to try for a VBAC this time. And if I do it, that I really want pictures. I want to celebrate it and have it documented. This is how she put it. She said, if I fail, I'm not going to want pictures because I'm just going to be so devastated. And it spoke to me so, we both started crying on the phone to each other.
Yeah,
The way that she was speaking about it is how I felt about my first delivery, which ended in a vaginal birth, but I felt like it was a failure because of all of the interventions and the lack of autonomy and all of the agency that had been stripped from me through the whole experience. And I just said to her from the center of my heart, I said, no. First of all, it will not be a failure. You're still giving birth to your baby, no matter how they come into the world. And if you end up with another C-section, those are the pictures that you will want, because you will want to be able to see the moment that you gave birth to your baby and celebrate that moment for what it is and reclaim it as your birth and not a thing that is happening to you. And we were both in tears and I still get teary thinking about it now, because that's at the core of it. That's what birth photography is for me. It's helping pregnant people own their births, celebrate their births, reclaim them as this huge accomplishment that they are achieving, regardless of who is assisting them in doing it, whether the baby comes out vaginally or surgically. You are giving birth to your child, and that is worth celebrating and documenting and remembering. And I remember when I was in labor with my daughter, I remember my husband saying, do you want me to take some pictures? And I actually said, why would I ever want to remember this horrible experience? And that's truly how I felt in the moment. I was so devastated at how my birth was going. Yeah. And I will regret that for the rest of my days, because now I understand that if I had pictures of her birth, it would have helped me step outside of the experience that I had, which will always be valid, but it's the only one that I had. And the gift of being able to see the wider perspective, the wider room, other people's faces. And, if I had a picture of the moment that she was born, I could go back and say, wow, look at this amazing thing that I did, and help process what I felt, which was, thank God it's over. And, give me a better perspective on the really hard work that I did to bring her into the world. So
Yeah. It's, you know, hindsight is 2020, right? And it's hard. This is, I just had a conversation with another photographer talking about why we include all the digitals in our packages. And one of the reasons is like, because what you don't think you want now, you're going to wish you had in the future. The future you is going to want those photos of you that you think are bad, because you want it all. You want to be able to see the big picture, because you can't when you're too close to it. And that, you're exactly right. And you are making me regret not having my births photographed. I'm like such an easy sell. It's like immediately I'm like, yes, I am so done having children, but like 9 years ago I was done, but like I'm ready for my birth to be photographed. Yeah. My doctor my husband had me pack my DSLR for the hospital. I had C-sections. They weren't emergencies and they weren't traumatic, but, and he had me pack my DSLR. And for me, that was like, yeah, I'll take pictures of the baby after the baby's born. And
Right.
the doctor was like, oh no, bring that into the OR. You're going to be taking pictures of, and I was like, I don't want to see that. And he's like, just take them. So I have pictures like blown out, overexposed, because that those lights and,
Oh, yeah.
my husband's not a photographer, but,
Right.
but I have photos of my daughter being pulled, and I think my son too, being pulled out.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So you do have
Yeah.
photos of birth. That's amazing.
Kind of. Not like what you're describing, like this photojournalistic, like real raw, everybody in the room. I would love that now, because those are fond memories for me. I am so lucky that no part of my
What an
births
amazing
were
doctor that you had
traumatic.
to point, to
Yeah.
push that for you. That's such a gift.
Yeah.
As a provider.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He it's so funny. Both of the doctors who delivered were great. The first one, he wasn't my regular OB. He was just who was on call when I needed to deliver. And he's got to be 60 now, and a man. So for him to be like that forward thinking like
Oh my
that,
gosh.
yeah, that
I
is
mean,
impressive.
yeah, I mean, doctors and midwives are all just human beings, and we all come in all varieties. And one of my favorite birth experiences that I got to document was a C-section. It was a redemptive C-section for this woman who'd had a pretty traumatic first unplanned C-section, and had opted to have a C-section with her second delivery for the purpose of reclaiming her birth. Like, she wanted to have
Right.
to kind of reclaim the control that she had lost in the first experience.
Yeah.
And part of that was having me in the room to document it for her. And she had the most amazing team of providers with her who all understood the mission. They understood what she needed, and that,
Yeah.
ushering somebody through a birth is not just about pulling the baby from the body. It is a full body, emotional, mental process. And anytime you find a provider who understands that the goal of a birth is not just healthy parent, healthy baby, like in the strictest sense of those words, it's also the emotional and mental well-being of the person giving birth.
Yeah.
If you find somebody who understands that holistic approach, you're like, you're golden. Hold on to that person
Yeah.
for dear life.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, because it's so much more than that. And there's a very funny change that happens to you from the time you're pregnant, especially when it's your first, to the time that the baby is on the outside. All of us, I remember like the first time I noticed it was like, when I was pregnant, I would pull into the driveway with a car full of groceries, and my husband would rush out to come and help me and like bring all the groceries in. And then once the baby was here, it was like, let's get the baby. Let's like baby first, baby first, baby first. And it was then I was like, oh, this is a different shift. Like, things are different now. Yeah. And that's how the world kind of treats, parents too. Once the baby's out, it's like, oh, you go hang out on that back burner over there. Like, we have like where it should be a complete care. Everybody needs
And that
a lot of care during that time.
That was one of the most harmful things that people said to me, and I know in my heart that it was always meant with the best of intentions. But any time after my daughter was born, that I would try to express the discontent that I had with my birthing experience, it would be immediately shut down with, but you had a vaginal delivery and a healthy baby. You should be so happy. And I internalized that for years to the point of like, oh my God, like, do I not love my daughter enough because I'm pissed about the way she was born? Like, I really struggled with that until I got pregnant with my second, actually, and realized that I had all of this, you know, latent anxiety from my first birth. And it was our doula who really helped me process that and learn that two conflicting things can be held true at the same time. I love my daughter more than anything in the world. I'm so grateful for her. I am grateful that she is healthy and was born healthily, and that I, you know, made it through the pregnancy healthy and all of that. And I really am pissed at the way that I was treated while I was in labor with her and the way that she was born. Like, both of those things are true, and they don't detract from each other. And, you know, it's so funny that you're like, oh, I wish I'd had my births photographed. So I am a birth photographer who has no birth photos of my own.
Of course. Of course.
Because, you know, with my first two, I think I just didn't really understand yet. You know, the first one, I didn't know it existed. The second one, I don't think I was really there yet. The third one, obviously, and this is very common for a lot of people, like, oh, we're going to pull out all the stops. We're going to have the amazing home birth. We're going to have the doula and the birth photographer, and we're going to have the whole thing. And he was born so fast that only my midwife made it here in time.
Oh my goodness. Oh, really? Right. So he was born at home, right? And like,
well, and this is what we always say is that thank God we were planning a home birth, because he was being born in that bathroom no matter what. I'd had a couple of days of like, you know, early labor stuff, but like, you know, 20-minute apart inconsistent contractions. Nobody would say like, oh, you're about to have a baby. And I went to bed Friday night, like seriously 20 minutes apart, barely anything happening. I slept for an hour. I woke up in transition, and he was born under an hour later.
That's awesome. So, fun fact, I was the third, and it was time for my mom to go to the hospital and have me. And she insisted on taking a shower before leaving. And they're like, come on, Louise, like, what are you doing? Like, just go. You need to have this baby. What are you doing? Right. So she was not planning on a home birth, but she delivered me herself in the shower at the home where I grew up. Yeah. This is 1985. So it wasn't like, it wasn't a thing yet. But I think she said.
Probably more of a thing back then, actually, honestly.
Yeah.
Home birth has kind of waxed and waned in our society over the
Yeah.
That's amazing. Ugh.
Yeah. My umbilical cord was tied with a shoelace. It was like my grandmother was like, it has to be a new one. Go get a new shoelace. Can't be one of those dirty ones. And the placenta was in like a brown paper bag.
Oh my God.
And I imagine they just held me in their arms in the car on the way to the hospital. Yeah. And what was funny is the hospital tried to bill my mother for delivering me there. Of course. Yes.
Oh my God.
But yeah, that was yeah. So she was not planning on that. Yeah. I think that third one, you just like the first two really paved the way. And then it's like, we're fast and furious.
And you know, as much as birth is unpredictable and you can never really say, in the birth world, we say the first baby tends to take the longest, or it tends to take a long time. And that's by design, because your body has never done this before. You don't really want to like shoot out a baby the first time.
Right.
You need time for things to like stretch and open, and for you to kind of mentally accept that this is what's happening. So first babies tend to take the longest. Second babies we call ninja babies. They just kind of sneak up on you, and they'll just kind of fly out. Although the misnomer there is not that they come early, because I'll have a lot of second-time clients who are like, oh my God, I'm still pregnant and it's 41 weeks. I thought second babies were supposed to be fast. And I was like, yeah, once you're in labor, they tend to come out fast, but that does not mean that they come early. So that's a very common misconception. But then they say that the third baby is the wild card. And then what I always say is like, and then literally every baby after that. Like, if you just keep having babies, it just gets more and more unpredictable. It's not like I had a very kind of classic trajectory where my first one was 36 hours, my second was 6 hours, and my third was under an hour. but that's not like a guarantee.
Right.
Like you could have your
Right.
longest birth with your third, and then your shortest with your fourth, and
Right.
then a C-section with your fifth. Like there's just
Right.
literally no way to know.
Yes.
So
Yes. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So you have all this extra knowledge because when did you become a doula?
I trained as a doula in 2016 while I was
Oh, it's
pregnant
been
with
some
my
time.
third. Yeah. So
Wow.
what happened? So I did
Wow.
my first three births in 2016 and very quickly, oh no, 20, wait, what, 2014. Very quickly knew that I loved birth and knew that I needed to be more educated if I was going to feel like a responsible person in the room. Like I wanted to know
Right.
what was going on so that everybody on the team could trust that I was like a safe person in the room. They didn't have to tell me where to stand or what to
Yeah.
do, and that I would understand what was going on. It was actually one of my very first births. After those first three were with a family for whom I've done all three of their births, and they're very close friends of mine now, and I just adore them. But their very first labor was very long and very hard. And it was just the two of them and me in the room for most of the labor. It was at the
Yeah.
birth center where they're very lovely and they kind of come in and check on you, but they mostly leave you alone. And, you know, we were on hour like 12 or 13 or 14 of this birth, of this labor. And they would look to me like, what do you think? What should we do? And I was like, ah, I don't know. Like this, you know, I've given birth,
Yeah.
but that's not really enough for me to like give you
Mm-hmm.
advice on what's
Right.
happening. And I left that birth thinking like I should know. Like not that I should always have the answer, and it's not often my place to tell people, you know, my opinion at a
Right.
birth, but as that birth unfolded, I just found myself wanting to know without having to ask somebody in the room, like what's happening now and what's
Yeah.
happening now. And
Yeah.
so that's when I went and got my doula training. So that was 2016. I had my third baby in 2017. So I took kind of like a little bit of a break and kind of slowed down with births for a little while. And I never really, I felt like photography was plenty. I didn't need to also be a doula. I just wanted to be one for my own kind of education.
Right.
And
Right.
then the pandemic hit. And aside from those first couple of months where most labor spaces were completely locked down, like in some states, not even the partner was allowed in. Like it was really bleak for those first couple of months.
Yeah.
Around like May or June of 2020, they started opening birth spaces back up to a partner and a doula. And it was very clear and strict that that's what that was. And so suddenly my doula training was a hot commodity. And I was
Seriously.
so
Wow.
it was like a thing that I'd had in my back pocket for years that I was now able to pull out and offer to all of my clients who had hired me before things
Right.
got bad,
Mm-hmm.
to say like, well,
Yeah.
I'm a doula. I can do this. I can come to the
Yeah.
hospital. I can come to the birth center. I can show them my certificate, and they'll let me in the room. And so the very first birth that I went to, once things opened back up again, she had actually hired a doula and me separately originally. And then the birth center was saying she had to pick one. And she said, well, I mean, I need you there because you can't do your job if you're not there. But I'm really
Right.
like upset that our doula can't come. And her doula was actually a friend of mine who I'd known for years. And so I spoke with their doula to kind of catch me up on what they had worked on so far. The doula was available by phone while they were in labor, and then I was there as to provide physical support in addition to
Right.
photographing the birth. And that again was the universe kind of pushing me over the edge, because after that first birth, I was like, "Oh, why have I not been using my doula skills all of this time? I really love this. This is amazing." And it's
Yeah.
challenging. You know, I've had births where I'm all three. I will be taking photo, I will be doing video, and I will be providing doula support. But it's again a challenge that once I was met with it, I was like, oh yeah, well this was what I was supposed to be doing. This feels correct, and it's just kind of gone from there.
I'm and it makes sense. I'm noticing more and more birth photographers are also doulas, and now it makes a lot more sense that
Yeah.
that would be, what people did. Yeah. That's
I mean,
awesome.
I
That's
recommend
awesome.
it anytime I'm mentoring a new birth photographer or a photographer who's thinking about going into birth. I will recommend a doula training. And there are, they don't have to go the full certification route. Just do the
Right.
weekend training, even if it's just for your own education, because you'll be able to serve your clients better. You'll be better prepared. Being a birth worker
Hmm.
is not something to enter into lightly. And so I really, if they have the passion for birth, I recommend investing in the training because it never hurts to be more educated. I think it always helps to
Right.
be informed.
I, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. To know, especially in a birth space where things can go any direction. There
absolutely.
is, it's hard to predict and to be prepared
Yeah.
as prepared as you can be
Being
going in.
prepared as you
Yeah,
can
that makes
be
sense.
and to be able to advise your clients because a lot, even if I'm not serving as doula for my clients, I will still get those text messages of like, I can't tell if I'm in labor. I don't know if you should come yet. And, some of it does come with experience. It obviously gets easier the more years that I've done this and I have, you know, dozens of birds in my pocket now that I can pull from. But starting with that, foundational knowledge helps me come from a place of like, yes, I understand that this is how things can go, even if it's not how I have experienced
Hmm.
it. And it really helps.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, now I'm very curious to know. You're talking about being the doula there, being the photographer, and being the videographer. Can we just talk logistics? Like, how do you physically do that? Like, what does that look like?
Sure. So what it physically looks like is me with my camera. I try to be as innocuous and inobtrusive at a birth as possible.
Hmm.
And especially having done this for so long, I know that the best way for me to be able to do my job is for my clients to forget that I'm there. And even if they look up and see me, I want them to see my face. I don't want them to see a camera pointed at them. I want them to be able to stay in the moment and not be taken out of their experience. What I tell them is what you're doing is buying yourself the chance to stay fully immersed in what you're experiencing and let me worry about documenting it. Me worry about creating the moments of memory for you that you can hold on to later when all of the hormones rush through and you can't remember what
Yeah.
happened or how long
Yeah.
it was or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I bring multiple camera bodies with me. I usually end up only using one. There have been a couple of birds where I've been able to set up multiple cameras. Usually, so if clients hire me for photo and video, I will mostly use just one camera body to do both, and I'll switch back and forth. And I've gotten really good at
Okay.
going, oh, that's the photo that I want, and now I'm going to take a couple seconds of video, and I'll kind of, alternate that way.
Right.
I do always have them tell me if, especially for the moment that the baby is being born, sometimes can happen very quickly, and there's only time for one or the other. They always have to tell
Right.
me if it comes down to the pinch, which do you want me to prioritize? I have had a
Yeah.
couple of birds where I'm able to run two cameras at the same time so I can get the video and the photo at the same time.
Hmm.
But I can't guarantee it because, we could have this beautiful home birth set up and I could have my cameras set up and then the person in labor suddenly goes, I have to go to the bathroom and the baby's born on the toilet in the smallest bathroom you've ever seen and I'm standing in the sink shooting over everybody's head trying, you know what I mean? So
Yes. Yes.
just like birth itself, birth photography, you have to plan and then let go of the plan and,
Yes.
you
Hmm.
know, and roll with whatever
Yeah.
happens. I did have a hospital delivery that I was able to kind of prop my camera up on like a chair, pointing at the person in labor and then was shooting kind of live over here. And so I was able to mix and match the
Okay.
footage that way.
Yeah.
And my all time, like the time that I wish that there had been another photographer there to take photos of me in this situation was it was a home birth. And I think it was her third baby. So these third babies that just like to sneak up on you and fly out.
Yes.
I pulled up to the house and I could hear her laboring in the bathroom from outside. And I just knew, I was like, oh my God, I'm about to miss it. And I ran into the house. I just whipped both of my cameras out of my bag. She was a photo and video client. So I was like, if I can get both, this is the moment. I run
Yeah.
in, and sure enough, they're in this tiny bathroom. and it's dad and mom and midwife all lined up between like the tub and the sink on the floor. And I squeezed myself into the doorway of the bathroom, and I propped my one camera on my knee and just started shooting video. And I took my other camera and with my pinky finger started taking photos. And seconds after I arrived, the baby just flew
Oh my
out,
goodness.
and I got the whole thing. It was
Oh my goodness. Oh my
so,
goodness. And then I imagine you stick around for a while
yeah.
for like some of those bonding moments and that
Yeah, I typically stay for a couple
and
of hours after the baby's been born because
yeah,
a lot can happen, and that's really when
sure.
that post-birth amnesia starts to kick in,
Yeah.
and the parent
Yes.
later will be like, I don't remember anything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
Yep. I know. It is so, it's like such a foggy, even like just the first week in general. It's just
oh my
so,
gosh,
so foggy. So
by
foggy.
design. I'm
Yeah.
very sure it's by design.
I am sure. I'm
Lots of
sure.
really
Yeah.
beautiful
Because
children.
that's right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, so like, can we talk a little bit equipment? Like, are you going in there? It sounds like you are a minimalist. You're not going in with a tripod. I didn't hear you say anything about a light. You just have multiple camera bodies and you use them as you need.
Yep. So I shoot. My main bodies are Sony A7 IIIs. I also actually just got an A7C, which it's like a same. It's like the A7 III, but it's like a little bit smaller, and I have a really small lens for it.
Okay.
That I was just at a birth recently where they were having a C-section. They weren't going to let me in the OR with the family, and I was able to set my really small camera. It looks a lot less intimidating to a lay person. So I was able to hand that to dad, who was able to hand it to a nurse, and she was able to get good enough shots that I could edit them later and still give the family what they needed. So
Yeah.
those are the 3 bodies that I come with. I do actually bring a flash, and this is something that I'll
Okay.
discuss with my clients because humans are just mammals. Most of us prefer to give birth in the dark, and so most birth spaces are pretty dark.
Yeah.
That is when I switched to mirrorless. Several years ago, Sony was really the best of the best. I
Yep.
know a lot of other
Yeah.
cameras have caught up since then, but I'm still very happy with my Sonys. They do really
Yeah.
well with low light. I'm not afraid of grain. I'm not afraid of, kind of editing through all of that stuff. But what I do discuss with my clients ahead of time is if I show up and you're laboring in the dark and I know that you want photos or video of what you're doing, I'm going to try to add some light to the situation without disturbing you. So my first go-to will be maybe I turn on a lamp or a hallway light or a bathroom light, something that's outside of their immediate space, but will give my camera enough light to work with.
Right.
I'll try that first. And I always say to them, you will not hurt my feelings, you won't offend me if you say, I hate that, the lights will go off. Because the
Yes.
priority is that the
Yeah.
person in
Yeah.
labor is able to stay in the space that they need to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then my next kind of go-to is to bounce flash, because I know that's really quick, and the person in labor has never noticed when I use my flash because they are so involved in what they're doing, and the flash is so
Right.
fast. That's
Right.
usually plenty.
Yes.
If anything, a partner or a midwife might not love it, because when you've been sitting in the dark and all of a sudden
Sure.
there's a big flash, it's hard. I'll always warn them first, like, hey, I'm gonna throw my flash on for a couple
Yeah.
of shots. Make sure you
Yeah.
don't look at me when I, for the next couple minutes.
Right.
Um,
Right.
But even that, because I know I'm not constantly shooting, I'm just taking 1 or 2 shots and then I'll move on and I'll do something different. Usually they don't care. In hospitals, it's usually not that big of a problem because hospital providers are going to throw lights on when you're ready to deliver anyway. But what I'll always tell folks when they're starting out is get really comfortable with shooting in low light without a flash. Because your flash might not work, the person in labor might hate it, the hospital provider might hate it. Like,
Right.
you have to know how to use your gear and push it to its limit and get the shot with what you have to work
Yep.
with.
Yeah.
I bring a flash. I like to use it sometimes, but I make sure that I'm not depending on it because it's not dependable. It's not a thing that you can count on
Right.
to work or be
Right.
able to use all
Right.
the time.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I do say to my clients too is after we've covered all of those things, I will say, like, and if you just hate all of those options and you need it to be pitch black at that moment, that's okay. You won't get a photo of that moment, and that's okay too. Like, that's part of your birth story, is that you labored in a pitch black room for a little while. I'll take video of black rooms. Video, I
Sure,
don't
sure.
care. Obviously, I still, I'm not going to use a flash with video, obviously, so there is a little bit more of turning lights on for that sort of thing. But the way that
Right.
I edit my birth films is with ambient noise and people talking and the natural noises that people make when they're in labor. So I am all for footage that's completely black, but you can hear somebody going through contractions. I think that's totally,
Yeah.
useful and valid. So
Yeah. Can I ask you some questions about your films? Because that's very intriguing to me. So are you doing it's a you said before like you'll take like a short like couple second clip. So are you
mhm.
taking couple second clips and then with like you said with the ambient sound, you're not
Yeah.
cutting out the sound or anything like that. You're using the sound at normal speed and then you're just stitching them together and from in succession and you
Yeah.
deliver
So
these like yeah.
yeah. So I will take most of my clips, I would say probably average like 10 to 20 seconds long at the most,
Okay. Yeah.
unless, something really interesting is going on and I'm like, ooh, they're having a really cool conversation, or the parents are saying something really sweet to each other, or I'm waiting for the baby to do, make some sort of cute noise or things like
Yeah.
that. But for the most
Yeah.
part, most labors are very repetitive, right? Contractions
Mhm.
kind of look very similar to each other for a lot of people, especially if it's a very long labor. What I'm not doing is setting up the camera and just letting it run. What I'm not doing is just giving you an 18-hour long video of your labor start to finish. Just like we do with
Right.
photography, I'm crafting the story of your labor for you to be
Right.
able to go back and look at later. So you don't need footage of every contraction. You don't need minutes and minutes and minutes of video. And something that I learned very early when I was learning how to make films is that most footage, even when you're watching TV, is only a couple of seconds before they change the
Yep.
viewpoint.
Yep.
And I had never
Exactly.
picked, it's that red car effect. I had never
Yes.
picked up on it before,
Yes,
and
yes.
now I can't
Yeah.
stop seeing it.
Mhm. Mhm.
But
Exactly.
that's
Yep.
that's
Same.
the same approach to making a birth film. So, when I'm
Yeah.
there, I'm thinking about how the story of the labor is unfolding and how I want to be able to show that later. And then when I go back to edit it, even a 10 or 20-second long clip might get cut down to just like 4 or 5 seconds, because
Yeah.
that might be enough of that moment, and then you move on to the next moment and then the next moment. Again, the caveat is the moment that the baby is coming out, I'll usually just let it roll if they've told me that the video is the priority for them. Because one of my
Right.
favorite things is the first words out of a person's mouth after they give birth are often the most, like, my favorite moment of the whole birth.
Really?
People say the most incredible things
Oh.
when their babies are born, and very few of us remember what those first words are because you're so
Yeah.
overwhelmed and
Yeah.
there's so much emotion,
Absolutely. I
so
don't
many
remember.
hormones, that being able to
It's
capture that is like, whew, that's the best.
yeah. I'm like I definitely don't remember. My first I didn't know the sex. So that was I know and I am not type A. So I and my strategy was to have zero preferences going in so that I wasn't disappointed and it worked. I wasn't disappointed. But my only request, I did have one request with my first and it was that my husband be the one to say it's a
Mhm.
da da da
Mhm.
whatever it
Yeah.
was. So that was probably and it was I yeah, who knows what I said though. That would be cool to know.
Yeah, I
Yeah, I would like
remember
that.
when my last was born, his birth is the most vivid for me, obviously, but I remember when he was coming out, I could feel him rotating in the birth canal. Like, I could feel all of these sensations
Oh,
that I
cool.
couldn't. To
Yeah.
my one of my biggest,
Yeah.
you know, one of the biggest kind of sadnesses that I had from my first two deliveries is that I was never allowed to push organically. I was always directed to push and told what position to be in and
Right.
all of that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so pushing for me for my third was a big fear point for me because I had no faith in myself that I could do it. And that was a big thing that my midwife really helped me work on. And even when I felt the instinct to start pushing, I asked permission. And she was like, you
Yeah.
don't have to ask, just do it. Like, if you feel like doing it, I'm here. Go, do what you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was like one of my favorite life moments was pushing my baby out. And I remembered feeling him. What we figured out is that he had a nuchal hand, so his hand was up by his face
Oh yeah,
when he
yeah,
started coming
yeah.
out. And then at some point, we think he like shifted and the arm came down, and
Mm-hmm.
that's when he like was able to finish rotating and come out. But I
Yeah,
felt that
yeah.
happening, and I said, "What was that?" And my midwife said, "That was your baby." And when he came out, I remember the first thing that I said to him was, "Oh, was that you?" Because the connection in
Oh,
my brain
oh,
just hadn't like just that moment of like these incredible
oh,
things
oh my
that
gosh.
and then seeing the person that I had made like it was
Yeah,
just so yeah.
yeah. That's huge. Oh my goodness. Oh,
Yeah.
that's a beautiful story.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, that's so
Yeah.
cool.
But
Oh, I
then to
love
add
that.
to
I
the
love
other thing
that.
that you asked about the video, um, you know, I was just saying this to somebody the other day, is like making a film is the same thing as crafting a photo. Like everybody has different editing
Hmm.
styles and different shooting styles.
Yeah.
You know, there are lots of really beautiful birth films where there isn't ambient sound and there's just a beautiful music track and, you know, it all flows together really lovely. My personal style, I pair music with my films as well, but it's more of like an undercurrent for me because
Right.
birth
Right.
films for me are a documentary, like um, a documentation of your birth, and for me that includes the sounds and the noises and
Absolutely.
you know what the noises that you made when you were going through a contraction and the first thing you said after the baby was born and you know like all of those you know
Yeah.
what the midwives were saying off in the corner while you were over you know like all of that to me when people say like well which would you rather have birth you know photo or video and I'm like oh no like both 100% hands down because
Yes.
photos give you the gift of freezing that moment in time so that you can really soak it in and just kind of sit
Right.
in that singular moment. And a film gives you the gift of like what it sounded like, what it felt like, what the movements looked like, and you know, bringing you back into all
Yes.
of those sensations. But I
Absolutely.
100% think that both are like hugely valuable and important.
Yes. Yeah. I started offering film this year and
Mm,
agree. Yeah, agree. It's like it's just it's literally another dimension.
yeah.
It's yeah, so it's just a compliment to and you know, you can't hang a film on your wall. And you can't actually see the way your toddler used to like play with your hair from a photo. Like you don't see those movements. So
Yeah.
you need both. That's like
Well, yeah,
that's
and
how I feel now. I get
I'm a
that.
big album person too. I feel like some people are wall
Yeah.
art people and some people are album
Right,
people. I
right,
grew
right.
up crawling into my mom's bed, pulling out all of old photo albums, and so that's always
Yeah.
been for me. And so I also do photo albums for all of my clients because I want them to be able to sit down with their kids and narrate the story of their birth for themselves
Mhm.
too, and sit with the moments and
Yeah.
sit with the photos and feel
Yeah.
the pictures and turn the pages. Um,
Absolutely.
so yeah.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. I what was my so my other like logistics question
Mhm.
because these are always the things that I've wondered about
Sure.
birth photographers and you know I'm sure everybody else is too. Tell me about like the process. Somebody reaches out to you. I have people reserve their due date. So obviously you can't schedule a newborn session before the baby's born, but yeah, let's reserve your due date. So what does that look like in your business? And then how does it work? How many people can you accommodate in your schedule? And then all that. I'm very curious about this piece of it.
How does it actually work?
How does it work?
Yeah. Well, you know, it's funny because you mentioned wedding photography before, and
Right.
that is the
Right.
metaphor that I use to try to explain to people what birth photography entails. So I say, you know, as a society, we've all agreed that weddings are a big deal and you should have a photographer for them, right? You're going to expect to budget a certain amount for the wedding photographer. You're going to find somebody that you really connect with. It's really important that they show up and document this day for you. Ideally, it's something that maybe will only happen once in your life and like, big deal, right? So imagine that you were going to call a wedding photographer and you were like, okay, so we're getting married, but we're going to give you a month's window of when the wedding might be. we're going to give you 2 hours notice for when you need to show up. It might be in the middle of the night. It might last 4 hours. It might last 18 hours. There might be no lights on. We might change locations multiple times.
Right.
If you did not get laughed off the phone at that point, can you even imagine how much a wedding photographer would charge for that sort of service? So, like, you're putting your life on hold for upwards of 5 weeks to drop everything at a moment's notice and prioritize getting to this moment, right?
Right.
And so that's really the hardest thing for on-call birth workers in general, but birth photographers, literally everything has to take second to a birth if you are on call for somebody. And so, how that works, somebody reaches out to me, we're, due around this time, this is where we're delivering. I ask them to tell me a little bit of their story. I do a consult. I make sure that I meet everybody before they hire me because it is such a personal relationship, and I want to make sure that we both feel really comfortable with each other, that I'm going to be a person in their birth space. That's a huge, privilege and expectation, and I also want to make sure that I feel like I can really serve them. If it's a great connection and we're a good fit. Logistically, I take somewhere between 2 and 4 birds a month when I'm taking a birth for a month. And so what I have found has been working relatively well for me is to take upwards of 4 birds at a time for a couple of stretches. So like 3 months at a time, I'll take 4 birds a month, and then I'll take 2 months off. Because then I know for those 3 months, I can't travel. I'm not having a drink with dinner. I can't guarantee that I'm going to be anywhere. I might have to leave anywhere that I go in the middle. And then I'll get a couple of months to like have a good night's sleep, travel, go on vacation. You know what I mean? Like, I found that I've been kind of shifting my life kind of in those 2 phases has been working relatively well. And then on the client end of things, okay, great. I have room in my schedule. We're a good fit. They decide they want to hire me. They decide, do they want photo? Do they want video? Do they want both? Do they want to add doula service? All the good things that they can kind of piece together. Then I go on call for my clients at 38 weeks, just as a general rule. Sometimes there's exceptions to the rules, but for most people, 38 weeks is when I go on call. And what that means is that now, 24/7, my phone is going to ring if, they tell me any of the numbers, if it's them or their partner or their doula or their grandma, whoever might be calling me in the middle of the night to say it's time to go. Those numbers get programmed into my phone so that if my phone rings in the middle of the night, I know it's a birth and I know it's time to go. Ideally, we've been chatting before that happens. I always say, update me. Like every midwife appointment, every ultrasound, like anything that happens of note, just send me a quick text message, send me a quick email, because it's all information that I'm filing away. And especially as we get closer to their due month, I might notice a pattern that they're not aware of because they're in it. And I'll notice, hey, for the last couple of days, they've been texting me that they're feeling super emotional, or they've been having really big poops in the morning, or they've been starving and now all of a sudden they have no appetite. To them, that's not going to seem super significant. But for me, I'm just going to quietly make sure that all my batteries are charged and all my bags are packed and my contingencies are set up. Because I have been, I've been doing this a long time, and it's easier for someone to observe patterns beginning than for the person that's going through them. So ideally, I've had a little bit of notice, but sometimes not. Sometimes babies sneak up on you and you get the, oh my God, we're rushing to the hospital right now. Please meet us there.
Yeah.
I ask my clients to give me at least 2 hours to get to the birth once we've decided that it's time for me to go. Part of that is for my own sake. Like, I like to think of myself as superhuman, but I do need time to physically get where I'm going. And it is both knowing how births go and from my own personal experiences that sometimes babies come faster than we expect them to. And I also need a little bit of grace to understand that if the baby gets there faster than I could physically get there, that's your birth story. That was my birth story. I have amazing photos from the moment my birth photographer walked in, was everybody being like, oh my God, we had a baby. And, really beautiful photos of the newborn exam and my kids waking up to meet the baby and all of that kind of stuff. That's my story. Those are my birth photos. And that is sometimes how it goes. And that's an important conversation to have with my clients, that that, that happens sometimes, and we all have to understand that that's a possibility.
Yeah. So like what is your policy on if you do not make it like for the actual birth itself and you're just there for after the birth? What
Hmm.
you I imagine there's no price adjustment, nothing like
So yeah,
that.
I mean, it's basically like a nature of birth clause in my contract that,
Okay. Yeah.
birth is unpredictable, and that's what we're all signing up for here. So as long as everybody has done everything that they're supposed to do, they gave me the notice that they're expected to give me. I left as quickly as I'm humanly possible to do, and I got there as quickly as I
Right.
could. If the baby beats me there, that is a situation that we've talked about in advance. We understand that that is a scenario that can happen. And I say I will start shooting the moment that I get there. I will still stay for the couple of hours after and get the full story from the moment that I get there. But that's your story: is you had a precipitous labor,
Mm-hmm.
and the photos are like, hey, we had a baby. Um,
Yeah.
Honestly, that has happened a couple of times, and those are some of my favorite photos because the energy at those births is like, oh my God, I can't believe that just happened. And,
Yeah.
the kids getting
Yeah.
up and getting to meet the baby and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
There are, I'm a human being, and one of the benefits of running your own business is obviously you can, you know, decide what feels appropriate. I did have a birth where I was there for the labor, and she ended up transferring to the hospital and giving birth in the ambulance on the way. So I obviously was not able to photograph the actual baby coming out.
Oh,
And
that would have
in
been
that,
cool.
my God. In that
Yeah.
situation, I offered to come back and get photos for them after they came home because for my own sake
Right.
too, like there was no ending to the story. I had dad's cell phone
Right.
photos from the ambulance, but I just really wanted to kind of complete that story for them. So there
Yeah.
is a little bit
Oh,
of
yeah.
choose your own adventure, but for the most part,
Yeah.
if your birth happens really fast, that's part of birth,
Right.
if I'm not allowed into the OR, I have I have backups and contingencies for every situation that I can conceive of, so that if I'm
Right.
really not able to photograph the birth, it's not because I failed, it's because that was the nature of your birth, and that's just kind of how it played out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, there must be a lot of red tape with the hospitals. And are you sometimes allowed in the OR and sometimes
Mhm.
not?
Oh yeah.
Oh, so what dictates that?
uh Chance.
So
So
is it
what
like who's there and who's making those calls is like
it's which
will be it's a
providers are
staffing thing?
delivering. Yeah.
Mm,
So, for an OR delivery, there are obviously a lot of people there who are doing very important jobs, and
right.
we want all of them to be comfortable with a doula being present, because in those moments too, I'm their doula. I'm the person who's there supporting them during their delivery, and like I've said, an OR delivery is no less valid than a vaginal delivery. Like, you
Right.
should still have the support team in place that you wanted for your birth, regardless of how the baby is coming out. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so, what has most often come down to is it tends to be up to the anesthesiologist at a C-section, because the way that the room is set up, that's who I'm standing next to. So, like, you have the
Right.
pregnant parent on the table, you have the team behind the drape, you have the partner sitting next to them, and then you have the anesthesiologist on the other side of them, and then I'm given like a space to stand kind of behind the
Right.
partner.
Right.
And so it often comes down to the anesthesiologist if they feel comfortable having another person in their space, which a lot of them have been. A lot of them are like, yeah, it's fine. Like, if it's a non-emergent C-section, it's just a birth.
Right.
Everybody's
Right.
great, and that's also where
Right.
my doula training really comes in handy, because they can see that I'm a person who understands birth, and I know how to not be in the way and how to not touch surgical fields and all of this kind of stuff. That I'm not going to take pictures of the wrong things, and the main concern in most hospital settings is liability. And so
Right.
if you are sympathetic to that and you understand that you have to navigate around that in a hospital, most providers will see that you are understanding of what they're dealing with, and they'll work with you. The times that I have not been allowed in an OR is just, that the people in the room are not comfortable with an extra body. They're thinking worst case scenario. They're thinking, what if an emergency happens and then you're in the way? Which
Yeah.
I have been in C-sections where, the mom had too much bleeding after the baby was delivered, and they ushered me and dad and baby out to go and wait for her, and it was fine. It's still,
Yeah.
people in these situations are so well trained that even in an emergency, it's not an emergency because everybody just kind of
Right. Yes.
do. And if they're going to usher the dad out anyway, I'm just going to follow them. I'm not really in the way, but ultimately it's not up to me. So
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine that. So tell me, I'm so curious because I had C-sections, so I'm very familiar. Like, what are some of the things that you're photographing during the C-section? Do you stay in your little station near the anesthesiologist the whole time, or are you able to orbit a little bit? What's going on?
So at least in the Philadelphia area, in the hospitals that I have been in, they really don't want you to photograph anything in the surgical field. That has been a very clear red line that I have learned about. So
Okay.
I know I've seen birth photos of C-sections where they actually show the baby emerging. I don't know. I mean, part of the obstacle, if you want to call it that, to delivering in a hospital is that policies are enforced on a case-by-case basis, depending on the provider and how they feel about the situation. So there may be a day someday soon where I'll be allowed to photograph the surgical field. Hasn't happened yet. For the most part, I'm, before the baby is born, I'm photographing the parents' connection and the moment that they're just waiting for their baby to be born, and whatever the journey has been leading up to the C-section. Sometimes it was a planned C-section and everyone's really chill and calm. Sometimes it was after a really long labor and, this was just the route that was decided was the best one. And, usually I've been with them on that whole journey. And so I want to continue giving them documentation of them on this journey together, that emotional connection, how they're supporting each other and they're so anxious, and the parents' face when they hear the baby cry for the first time. And I've had several OBs be lovely enough to either lower the drape after the baby is born, or they'll lift the baby over the drape so the parents can see. That first moment is priceless. I love that so much. Then I photograph the parent and the baby going over to the warmer, getting cleaned up and weighed and all of that kind of stuff happening over there. I try to get a lot of that because usually the person on the table is hopped up on a lot of drugs, is not going to remember.
Possibly vomiting and
so I'm trying to capture what that all looks like for them as well. And, the parent that didn't just give birth is getting to connect with their baby for the first time. And those are such amazing moments. Sometimes they'll bring the baby back and do skin to skin with the birthing parent, and that is, I love when they do that so much. And then sometimes the non-birthing parent will get to do skin to skin in the OR, or at least hold the baby. It's a birth. It's just documenting a birth, just like any other birth. And I want to get those moments for them, so that they have them and they can just, it was still that baby's birthday. I want that baby to be able to see the moment that they were born and the looks on their parents' faces and, all of that stuff. So.
Yeah, you're making me think back to mine. That would be, I think my husband took some photos of some of those moments. Like I feel like there's a photo of my son being weighed, and it was this big, because I had big babies. So it was like this, the nurses had a lot of fun guessing like how big they were, how much they're going to weigh. And so that was, I am lucky. I have very fond memories of the OR and the C-section. I'm a little like deranged in that way, I think, but, I've always like my hospital experiences have been so positive that when I go there, I shoot a lot of fresh 48s.
Okay.
It's like a warm and cozy feeling. I'm like, I know all these people, like they've taken good care of me. I ended up with pancreatitis, gallstone pancreatitis after my daughter's birth. And I ended up back in a different wing of the hospital where I received really good care. So anytime like I come in contact with like nurses in the hospital, I just had a biopsy the other day. I'm like, they just make me feel warm and fuzzy. Like they are just so caring. And so I have very, very good memories of that time. And I'm sorry that your first two were not like warm and fuzzy like that. That sucks. Yeah,
I
not
mean, part
fair.
of it, like I said, we're all just human beings. So
Right.
I make it very clear, I am not anti-hospital. I'm not anti-hospital birth. I'm not anti-C-section.
Right.
I am
Right.
pro birthing people being given autonomy and
Yes.
care and the freedom to choose based on knowledge and not fear.
Right. Right.
That's my kind of core, is that regardless of
Yeah.
where you're giving birth, I just hope for you that you are doing that because you feel the safest there and you feel well cared for, and not because you're
Right.
too afraid of the alternative. And I've seen both. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
people giving birth in hospitals because they're afraid of the what if of a home birth, and I've seen people giving birth at home because they're terrified of hospitals.
Right.
I just pray that fear has no place in your birth, regardless of wherever you're delivering.
Fear is always the devil. It's always fear that's really like driving the negativity and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, it plays a big part in the birth industry in our country and in the medical industry,
Mm-hmm.
if we're really going to be honest. There's a
Yes.
lot of
Yeah.
fear around the what ifs. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's, again, I just want everyone to make their own choices. And when my husband and I decided to have a home birth with our third, we were met with all the what ifs and all of the people and their fear and all of the
Of
things.
course.
And we we are actually both type A oldest children. And so we did not enter into our choices lightly. We said, yeah, yeah, those are totally valid what ifs. Let's do some research. Let's look into it. Let's look at statistics. Let's interview the people. When we found our midwife, it was partly because we felt so comfortable asking her all of the what ifs and all of the worst case
Right.
scenarios. And she was so comfortable and non-judgmental to walk us through all of our questions and all the things, and to empower us to say, oh, here are some websites and some resources that I use to get this information. You guys read through this, and then let's talk about it. Let's all have the same
Right.
foundational knowledge, and then we can
Right.
discuss how you feel about it, rather than I'm the gatekeeper of the knowledge and I will tell you what the answer is. You can find providers like that in
Yes.
hospitals, birth centers, home births. Those are the gems. Those are the people who are not, like I said, they're not
Mm-hmm.
delivering your baby, they're helping you deliver your baby. And, some people don't want the information. Some people, that's too much for them. My
Mm-hmm.
imagination is always worse than the data. So I would rather have the
Yes.
facts
Yes.
and process that.
Yeah.
And I actually also had the gift when I was pregnant with my third. I was at a birth with my midwife as the photographer weeks before I went into labor. And
Oh,
it was
cool.
a third baby home birth, and it went a certain sort of way. And I had so many questions about how it had gone. And at our next
Yeah.
appointment, I said, can we please process this birth? Because I have so many questions. And she walked through every question that I had. And then some of the same things happened at my home birth. And I felt so prepared. And there were moments that were
Yeah.
intense, but they were never scary because I felt prepared and
Mm-hmm.
I felt safe. And as soon as my midwife showed
Yeah.
up, I knew I had somebody who was there to take care of me and who I trusted. And that, for me, was the right place. I had just learned for myself, hospitals don't feel warm and fuzzy. I
Right.
don't
Yeah.
really like a little bit of the white coat syndrome and
Right.
the
Right.
adrenaline.
Right. Sure.
That's just me as a human being, is how I feel.
Yes. And I think that's common.
It can be, but also as a doula, I've found that if you can help people process kind of those innate feelings of fear that people have around hospitals and medical providers, then you kind of can get at the core of it and be like, oh, it's not the hospital that you're afraid of. It's not that your provider makes you feel unsafe. It's that you have questions that have been unanswered. So let's go find those answers for you, and then help you
Mm-hmm.
feel better and more prepared
Yeah.
and all of that kind of stuff. So, that's why I try really hard not to project how I feel as a human being who gives birth in certain ways that feel good for me. I would never expect to put that on anybody else. I just
Right.
want everyone to be able to go through that journey for themselves, to pick the place that feels best for them out of empowerment and not fear. It's
Mm-hmm.
It's a really hard ask because there's a lot to unpack for a lot of people.
You can't help but feel anxious and explore the what ifs when you find out you're pregnant, especially your first. And that was like for me, as somebody who has like some mild anxiety, but like I had miscarriages before I finally, carried my son to term. So it was like always this, like, is the other shoe going to drop during my pregnancy with him? And I fell back on data and statistics and like, okay, the chances of me carrying this baby to term are higher than, and my body can get pregnant. And that was the hard part. And now we can do this. And like, so like having those little mantras, I remember like saying them to myself in the shower every day when I was struggling like with my mindset around my pregnancy, and like, your body was designed to do this. Like you have whatever percent chance of carrying this baby to term and things like that. But yeah, I am falling back on hard facts was really helpful with like washing away all of those like worry thoughts.
One of my favorite things to do for folks, they'll hear a statistic like your chances of this happening double after, the age of 35 is one of the most common things. Like, oh my God, you're in a geriatric pregnancy now because you're over 35.
They need to change that terminology.
It won't get better, I promise you. But one of my favorite things to point out to people is that whenever statistics use words like double or increase, you have to go back and look at what the original chance was. Because the original chance of a bad thing happening was 0.002%, and that chance has doubled. Sure, it's more than it was before, but it's still a really small chance.
Right, exactly.
Then your risk has doubled. So, that's where I find facts and science and data come in, and just, actual lived experience versus, policy on paper is the other thing of like, for most people we do this because for a lot of people this happens if we don't. And it's like, okay, cool. But like, do I have those risk factors? Has my pregnancy given you any sort of indication that I am at risk for these things? And, can you help me understand why you want to make this decision? And do I have a choice in this decision? And, it's not necessarily about doubting the intentions of a care provider. It's just, if you want, because some people are completely happy to follow the recommendations of their care provider and they're very happy with that. That's fine. I'm not going to judge them on that. But for some people that are like, oh my God, my care provider said that I have to be induced by this date because for most people over this number of weeks, this can happen. And I'm like, cool. Do you feel like you would like to ask them about X, Y, and Z to understand what those risks are for your specific pregnancy? Is this something that you want to explore? If it's not, that's the end of the conversation and we just go with whatever you're going to do. But usually if they're coming to me, it's because they do have questions and they need help finding the words to go back and say, hey, I really would love some more information about this before we make a decision on my care going forward. So
yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. You are just such a wealth of knowledge. So let me ask you I bet there are photographers who found this episode because they are curious about becoming birth photographers. So what advice do you have to those people?
Well, get educated, figuring out, whether or not you've given birth or you've witnessed a birth before. Getting educated on what birth actually entails is a great first step, because it can seem like this really romantic, wonderful, amazing thing, and it can be, but it can also be really, really hard and difficult. And like I said, it should not be something that anybody enters into lightly, both on the service provider end of things. The thing that I hate the most is hearing that somebody says, I'm a birth photographer, and then they don't show up, and they don't answer the phone call, and the person does not get the service that they're promised. Being on call is huge, and it's hugely disruptive to your life. So that's the number one thing. Do you actually think that you could be on call? Talk to your partner. Do you have kids? Do you have another job? Do you have other things that you've committed to? Would you be able to leave any of those things at a moment's notice and reschedule or not show up or cancel or whatever it has to be to make the birth the top priority? Being on call is the reason that most people don't last in on-call birth work. Because it runs your whole life when you're on call. So be educated about birth and all the different ways that birth can go. Obviously looking at the different birth options in your area. Some areas only have hospitals, and so you have to decide, would you be comfortable going to a hospital and witnessing a birth? Are hospitals open to doulas and photographers, kind of how closed is the birth, space in your area? Is there a birth center? Are there home birth midwives? What are the options? And on the other end too, would you be comfortable walking into somebody's home and witnessing a home birth, and all of the kind of differences that might entail if you're only exposed to hospital births? For most of us, we've only seen hospital births, and we've only seen them on TV and in the movies. And almost zero births happen the way that they happen on TV and in the movies.
Of course. Of course.
So that
Yeah.
can also be a huge wake up for a lot of people. Expose yourself to birth photography, to birth videography, get a look at what it would look like. Okay, so at that point, if you've decided like, yes, I'm still all in, even with all of the challenges and the difficulties and, the sleepless nights and all of that, I really think that for me, and in Philadelphia especially, we have an amazing birth community. The midwives, the nurses, the OBs. It's Philly's like a really small, big city. You run into people that you know all the time. And then if you go down into like a sub-community of the city, it's even smaller. So like most of the doulas know each other, all the midwives know each other, and it's really lovely. So for me, in my experience, I've been doing this almost 9 years. Showing yourself as part of the community is also a really big part. Like, are you just doing this for fun, or are you really going to invest in the community? Are you going to be a trusted birth worker? So networking, reaching out to doulas, reaching out to midwives, reaching out to the birth center, seeing those types of connections that you can make, I think are really priceless. And then starting slow, like do one. Don't immediately throw it up on your website and be like, I'm a birth photographer now. And then you realize that it's the hardest thing you've ever done. Do one, see how it goes, find people who can mentor you, support you. You were asking earlier about my workload and how many I can take on at a time. That hugely depends on whether or not I have other people in the area that I can depend on for support. So my husband is my number one support. If he was not on board with this, with me leaving in the middle of the night and him suddenly single parenting for a day, that wouldn't really work out really great. I also have amazing support in my mom, who lives really close by. And so like yesterday, I had to run to a birth at 3:00 and my kids were getting out of school at 3:25. And I called her, like putting my shoes on, saying like, oh my God, can you go pick up my kids from school? She was able to.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, if I didn't have that, I couldn't do this.
That's
exactly. My kids are very important to me. I don't want them, abandoned after school. So if I didn't have that, that's one type of support network. But the other is ideally other birth photographers in the area who you can talk to and you can be in community together, who, a big part of the service that I provide is having somebody that I can call in a worst case scenario to say, oh my God, my client's in labor and my car won't start. Can you get there until I can get there? Or I came down with the flu and it's not safe for me to be in a birth space right now.
Right.
Pinch hit from, there are still things that happen no matter how many contingencies you put in place. So that, I call that like standby backups of people that you can just call to be like, maybe they're not a full-time birth photographer, but they are a skilled photographer who understands the birth space, and I can trust them to go in and act as my proxy. That's one thing. The other thing is actually something new that I've been doing this year, where I've been traveling a ton. I got to speak at a conference for the first time this year. I'm trying to figure out a way to live more of my life and travel and do things with my family and all of that.
Yeah.
And I am one of very few birth photographers in my area right now. And in the 9 years that I've been doing this, it waxes and wanes. Like sometimes there's more and sometimes there are fewer. The pandemic took a lot of people out. A lot of people that I used to be able to call on as a backup are not down for that anymore, which is totally fine. But a lot of this work does depend on being able to call on somebody for help. And so that's actually something that I'm working on now, is trying to cultivate a new network of people. I'm trying to find people who maybe did a birth, or they are interested in birth photography, and I'm trying to mentor and create more of a community, because you cannot do this work alone. You can't be the only birth worker in your area, not only for having a backup in a worst case scenario, but also like if you have a really difficult birth that you witness, you need somebody who understands what you just witnessed to
Yes.
process that with.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a birth photographer in that case, but like I have a really close doula friend who I'll call on and be like, I got home from a birth I was there all night, so I was exhausted, but I knew I couldn't go to sleep until I talked to somebody about what I had just witnessed. That is also really important. Just your own mental and emotional health as a birth worker, you need
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. How do you, I imagine that is like another thing, another consideration is what you may see that you can't not see.
Yeah.
There's going to be trauma for you if you do it long enough. It's just you're probably going to see some really sad things. And can you process that and continue life? Like how are you equipped? Because I am not equipped to handle anything like that. And part of the reason that I don't do it, it's just, I couldn't, yeah, I remember somebody who's a longtime client of mine now, the first time that she reached out to me was when she was pregnant with her first child, and she was looking for a birth photographer when she reached out to me. And I explained to her why I'm not a birth photographer. And here's what, and what I told her was, in order to provide birth photography for you, you would have to be the only thing in my schedule for a certain amount of time. And for that reason, amongst many other reasons, I would have to charge you more than I would charge to shoot a 12-hour wedding. And there's all of these, unknowns too. We don't know if this, that, and the other. And it's just, I think my daughter must have been an infant, if not a newborn at the time. And I'm not in a position to leave my family at the drop of a hat right now either. So how about a fresh 48? That was like my alternative. And that's what she went with. And, it was great, but she was like, oh, I guess I never thought of it that way. So, how do you, I'm not going to ask you to divulge your prices, but, what recommendations do you have for somebody trying to figure out how to price their birth photography services?
Yeah. I think in any area of photography, this is the hardest question to ask. We all struggle with,
yeah, yes, we
balancing the value of what we do and how much we truly believe in the art that we're making and the reality of the market that we live in and the economy
market.
And all of those things. Yeah. And the imaginary line that's somewhere in the air of like, this is the line where people will pay. And then if you cross it, that, it's just.
Yes. Yeah.
So, the advice that I would give, I will say when I first started 8-9 years ago, there was one other birth photographer in the area who was a friend of mine and kind of mentored me as I was getting started, and then stopped pretty shortly after I started because she had reached a point in her family life where she couldn't do it anymore. Birth photography was going for like under $1,000 at the time, and I've been doing this for 8-9 years, and I have slowly gotten it to be about triple of that in the Philadelphia area, depending on what, which parts of the package they pick and all of that kind of stuff. Upwards of $3,000 to $5,000 really is what most of my clients pay. And
that's so reasonable, by the way. It's like a bargain. Yeah,
it's a bargain. I take it back to that wedding scenario of like $10,000
well, that's it.
minimum just to like show up, let alone the 4 weeks of on call. And I can't do weddings when I'm on call for a birth because I'm not going to not show up to a wedding, and I'm not going to leave a wedding in the middle to go to a birth. Like, you cannot do certain things when you're on call. It really runs your life. And the hardest thing about pricing birth photography is like, okay, so for a family session, I could reasonably estimate the number of hours that I'm spending with a client start to finish, from acquisition to booking to planning, shooting, editing, selling, delivering. Okay. Then you can take those number of hours, you can say how many clients you want to work with a month or a year and how much you'd like to make. You do the math, you figure out roughly how much you need to make per client. Right. If I tried to sit down and do that with a birth client, let's,
Yeah.
even if I took the short end of the spectrum, like let's say the average. So let's say the average number of clients are going to go somewhere in the middle of their birth month between 39 and 41 weeks. Let's say the average time I spend at a birth, let's call it 10 hours. That's just at the birth itself. That's not the hours, the days and weeks that you've been on call. It's not like, I don't sleep well when I'm on call because I'm in birth mode. I'm like listening for my phone, especially if we've been texting during the day. I'm not sleeping super well that night.
Yeah.
It's like when you have a newborn and you're like listening to hear if the baby's going to cry. It's that level of sleep. It's like it's that low hum of adrenaline of like, at any moment I might have to shift everything I'm doing and run. That's what happened to me yesterday. I was in the middle of a conversation I was having with somebody, and I got a text from my family who I knew had been at the hospital all day, and they were getting close. And I
Right.
got like, okay, she's 6 centimeters, and in my head I started thinking like, okay, let me wrap up this conversation because I probably need to leave soon. And then a few minutes later, he's like, you should probably come now. And I was like, I gotta go. And I just hung up, grabbed my stuff, called my mom on the way out the door, and I was in my car.
Yeah.
How do you put the face on something like that? So, you
Well,
know,
like it to me, like in my head, when I do the math, it's like it is more a wedding photographer can do if you have the endurance and the stamina and
three to
whatever.
four weddings a
You
weekend,
could you
right?
can do 3 to 4 weddings in a week if you want to,
Yep.
and without worrying about stepping on toes, and outsource everything. Then, if you need to, have somebody do the editing for you, and just
Sure.
shoot. And you can do that if you're a wedding photographer. And now the standard has been elevated for wedding photographers, which is wonderful. Where I think like average is closer to 5K.
Mm-hmm.
And you can still
Or
get under and you
more.
can still go over. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely over. Absolutely
Yeah.
over. So, and that's one day. Even, and sometimes it's 12 hours of shooting, but sometimes you're shooting for, gosh, it could be, it's another big question mark. So you could either be showing up to like a birth that the baby comes out immediately and then you're there for another few hours and that's a 4 hour work day for you. Or it could be probably 24 hours. Like, what's the longest that you've ever been at a birth?
Yeah, upwards of 24 hours. I think the longest I
Yeah.
was at was 30. Um, but the funny thing too about it also is that even the 4 hour birth could be after you had a full day out with your family. You lie down for a hot second and then you have to get back up again and you work all
Oh,
night. And then you come home and your kids just got home from school and you have to hit, you know what I mean? So even a 4 hour
yeah.
birth. So like yesterday, I was at a birth yesterday. It was a lovely daytime birth where I had breakfast, I had lunch, I ran to the
Hmm.
hospital. She gave birth 2 hours after I got there. I stayed for another like 2.5 ish hours. I had my hour drive home. I was at home. I was back in bed at like a normal time. So like sometimes I
Right.
joke like I could do a birth like that every day. Oh, nice daytime birth. So easy.
Sure.
It's still like
That's your entire day, though, what you just
it's your
described. That's like
it's,
your day.
it's your entire day, and it
Yeah.
affects you. It affects you going forward. We
Yeah.
affectionately refer to it as the birth hangover
I was going to
because
say it's probably like a hangover.
running on adrenaline for that much time, like you've already been running on adrenaline leading up to the birth, and then it spikes when you're going because you've got to get there, and then you have to stay focused the whole time. There's no like I got my shot and then I'm sitting and chilling because anything could happen at any moment and things could turn on a dime. So you're just on it. You're fully engaged for the full time that you're there in a fast birth. There are longer births where like I can lie down and rest for a few minutes or take a nap or whatever, but like you're always ready to go. You're never really off the clock. Um, I know now how long the adrenaline will last me after the birth, and so I know like, oh, I've got to leave like no later than 2 hours after this birth is over because I've only got about 45 minutes before my adrenaline crashes and I need to be in bed. And my
Yeah.
husband actually will nicely remind me every once in a while because, I have like roughly an hour radius around Philly that I'll travel. So I'll go out to South Jersey, I'll go down to Delaware, I'll go out into the western suburbs. But every once in a while, I'll get a client that just like seems so dreamy, or like we really connect and they're going to have this amazing birth. And I just really want to be there. And I'm like, I mean, 2 hours isn't so bad. Like, I bet I could get, like, I'm more thinking, can I get there in time? Like, if they call me and they say, oh my gosh, she feels like she has
Right.
to poop really bad, which is like a big sign that the baby's about to come out,
Yes.
could I get
Yes.
there in time? That's what I'm thinking about. And then my
Right.
husband will chime in and he's like, and can you get home if it's 3 o'clock in the morning and you've been awake for 40 hours and you then have a 2 hour drive ahead of you? Like,
Yep.
I forget about that part. I
Yeah.
forget about the getting home part.
Yep. Yes.
Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, so anyway, so to get back to the pricing question, um, it's a hard one. It's something, the folks that I've mentored, I will work through it with them depending on where they live and their market and their costs and all of that kind of stuff. It is a little bit of a moving target and it's very specific person to person. The other reason that I always try to keep the other birth photographers in the area, in this nice support network is so that we also can keep each other in mind when we change our pricing, and nobody wants to be the one that gets hired because you're the cheapest. You don't want the price
No.
shoppers,
No.
especially not with a birth. So,
Especially not with the birth.
you know,
Yeah.
none of us want to be pricing in the dark. There's no point in competing against each other in that way. It only helps everybody if we all keep the value of this service up.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, somebody I was just talking to the other day, I was like, it's not so much whether or not you're priced quote unquote appropriately. My least favorite thing is to see people post on Facebook, like, I'm looking for a reasonably priced photographer. And I'm like,
Hate it. I hate it.
well, I think it's very reasonable that I charge enough to, like, support my family. And that
Yes.
seems reasonable to me.
Just say what your budget is. That drives me
Right.
nuts. I admin a mom
Well,
group and like I always say like just say your budget. What's the number?
right,
Just say it.
right. And also say your budget and then be open to being educated. Because if you've never hired somebody like
Mm-hmm.
a birth photographer before, you may not know what you should be budgeting for a birth photographer. So be
Right.
open to learning what goes into hiring a highly skilled, highly experienced professional to come in and provide this luxury service for you, which I always hesitate to call it that because I do at the core believe that birth photography and film serves a deep purpose for people. From my own experience, I know that if I had had birth photography of my own, it would have helped me process. I've had clients use my photos in therapy sessions to work through postpartum anxiety and depression and processing birth experience. Like, I 100% believe that it's a service that I'm providing, but it also is a huge effort on my part, and that needs to be valued. And
Yeah.
that's the hard line. It is a passion work. Like, hopefully I'm not scaring everybody off from ever trying it. Like, it is a passion work. You have to do it because you love it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you have to starve to do it. And that's the hard balance to find.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And you do offer mentoring for photographers who are curious about. I think this is like most genres of photography you could probably jump into. But I think if you are interested in becoming a birth photographer, I think absolutely find a mentor who has been doing this and don't try to reinvent the wheel.
And
Yeah.
don't BS and mess up, and that's like part of
Right.
why I offer mentoring and why I love talking to people who are interested in birth photography is also because it's a relatively new service that's being offered, and it's still very delicate. And especially in hospital settings where hospitals can be very nervous about allowing another person in the space, especially with a camera, especially because they're documenting what's happening and they're worried about liability and all of this stuff. I've heard, thankfully, it hasn't happened in Philly, at least in a long time, but I've heard in other areas where, like, someone who claims to be a birth photographer does the wrong thing in a birth space, and then that hospital clamps down and says, no more birth photographers.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
You don't
Yeah.
want to be that person. And
No.
it's not always, I'm sure you had the best of intention, but, like, you know, a birth space is a very delicate thing to navigate, and going in blind is a really risky thing to do. So why not go in just automatically having that knowledge and having that faith in yourself that you can do it, and you know how to be that trusted person in the space. So
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up with my fun questions now. Some lighter.
okay.
We got heavy stuff there today. That was good
I
though.
always warn people, like, this is my literal favorite topic. So
Well,
there's a
good.
lot.
Then, yeah. And then you're the perfect person to talk to about it. Okay. So Rachel, what is your favorite lens?
I'm a 24 millimeter girl.
Yeah.
I have a 24 to 105 that I'll use for, like, I do event photography, I do family, I do lots of other things. So I have my zoom for those sorts of things. I started with a 35 millimeter, and that I was like, oh, that's the documentary lens. Like, that's where I should be. But then, Philly is a really old city. Most of our homes are very narrow. Most of the
Mm-hmm.
spaces that I'm shooting in are very tight, and I can only back up so far. And I got a 24, literally a long time ago at this point, and I was like, ooh, oh yeah, oh, this is the one.
Yes.
And the distortion never really bothered me, although it's so easy to edit that out now. And I also, whether it's family photography or birth photography, I tend to get very, like, personal with my families. We, like, they hire me because they like me as a person, and we're gonna chat and we're gonna hang out, we're gonna, like, talk like friends. And so I like to be next to them, and oh, and then I'm also taking photos. Oh, and you didn't even notice, and that's really easy to
Yes.
do with a nice
Yes.
wide lens. So
Yeah. Yeah. I like to get close to. I'm not like a far away telephoto type of photographer at all.
I
Yeah.
fully
All right.
like
And
those
what?
photos are gorgeous. They're so beautiful. Love a compression,
Yeah. Yeah.
but for my style, it just doesn't work. Yeah.
No, those are like the sore thumb photos in my work. And like I shoot with a 50 almost exclusively, and 50 is so versatile that sometimes you can get a ton of
hmm
compression.
Yeah. It's
And
beautiful.
those always stand out. I'm like, oh, that doesn't look quite like what I normally produce.
Isn't that
Yeah.
funny? You like just get, you're like,
Yeah.
oh, this is just what my photos look like. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. What's your favorite piece of software that you use for your business?
I don't know, favorite. I use Lightroom for most of my editing, so I'm pretty comfortable with that. I
Yeah.
actually, I held out. I'm a good millennial. I like to own my software. I do not love a subscription service. I held
Yeah.
out for so long. I was rocking that Lightroom 6 for so long, and I only
Yes.
just upgraded this year to the new Lightroom. And I waited
That's
until
that's wild.
well, I'm not a heavy editor either. Like, I
Right.
don't do a lot of crazy stuff, so it was enough. It was plenty for I'm a pretty
Yeah.
minimal shooter. I'm a minimal
Hmm.
editor, and I never really felt the need to upgrade. And I finally, I would keep an eye on it, and I finally saw some features that I was like, that might be fun to play with. And then
Yeah.
I had a birth at the end of last year where very typically she was laboring in this gorgeous room with plenty of light and a big birth tub, and I had the perfect spot. And as a lot of birthing people do, she all of a sudden went, I have to get out of the water. And she just, and that's what you do in a home birth. Like, she gets up, we follow. Like, that's just what you do. And then, so, okay, now they're in the bedroom. I'm like, okay. So I find my new spot. She's on the bed. I've got the angle. I have my settings. I have my light all figured out. Great. I had my flash on just in case because the bedroom was a little bit darker. And then again, I have to get out of the bed, and ended up squatting between the bed and the bassinet that I had moved out of the way so I would have a better angle. And now I'm, like, hemmed in the corner behind the person giving birth in the darkest spot. My flash started failing, and I had to quickly throw my settings up to get the baby coming out. Like, the baby came out.
Right.
The photos were super grainy, and they were, I got the moment, but all the photos right before that I had been using flash, and then the ones after I was like, oh, I don't love this. And a friend of mine was like, you got to check out that denoise button on the new Ella. And it saved the day. It did it. So
Yeah. Yeah. That's sorry, technical difficulties.
oh
Everything's
no.
okay now. I think. Yeah, I'm a Photoshop editor, but my original Photoshop was the one that you own.
Uh-huh.
And what was it like? It was like over $1,000, I think, to buy that Adobe suite at first. And it's like,
Right. But then you buy
man,
it once, and then it's
you buy it
yours. You just keep
once
it, and
and
that's
then it's
it.
yours.
Yeah.
I know. I
So,
know. They're so update happy now that it's like,
uh,
they gotcha. They gotcha. So,
I get very grumpy with all the technology nowadays. Nothing makes me feel older than having to learn new technology.
I know it's a blessing and a curse. Like we were talking
Hmm.
about earlier. Sometimes just like too much. And you
Yeah.
just
Just take
overwhelmed.
me back to the dark room with the chemicals and,
Yes.
all
Yeah.
the
Simple.
basics.
Tell me about like your bucket list birth. Do you have like this fantasy birth that you would love to photograph one day?
Um, yeah, there's a couple that in my head just would be like really cool stories. Like that's always to me is like it's more like what kind of birth story do I feel like I haven't gotten the chance to tell yet?
Yeah.
So I I would really love to see a car birth one day. Like to somehow manage to be in the car with them on the way
Yeah.
to wherever they're giving birth and they don't make it and it's like this dramatic raw like we had a baby in the car. Um that which actually the birth center that I'm at the most often, the hospital that they transfer to is right across the street. And the first time that I was with a client that had to transfer, I took my own car to the hospital and I almost missed the birth because in the car, like, and the midwives will say, like, there's something that happens with that 2 minute drive across the street that the baby's like, oh, we're transferring? I should come out now. And so I almost missed it. We made it into the hospital room and they had the baby basically. But ever since that moment, I was like, from now on, I'm going with you for the 2 minute drive. Like, I'm not leaving your side because
And my
in my head,
fingers
that's what's
crossed.
going to happen. So that's one that I would love to see.
Yes.
And I've never gotten the chance to document a surrogate birth, which I think is one of the most, like, I get chills when I think about,
Mm-hmm.
like, the gift and the service that a surrogate is providing for a family. And,
Yeah.
I've seen photos of surrogate births and they always give me goosebumps. And I feel like to the honor of being present for something like that would be so amazing. So that's one that I would really love to get to see too.
Yeah, that is, yeah, somebody I know is a repeat surrogate, and that is another thing, like birth photography, like how that is like a different breed of person than I am to be able
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's incredible.
it's so much sacrifice just for somebody who is probably a stranger at first. So it's like so
Yeah.
beautiful and incredible that the type of person who can be a surrogate is
Yeah,
that blows my mind.
I did actually get to do a family session recently for a woman who herself was a parent and then had been a surrogate for a friend of hers. And I don't know their whole story. I don't know if they were friends beforehand, but they've kept in
Right.
touch since she gave birth.
Right.
And their kids are growing up together, and they know. Like her kids know the dad, and the kid she gave birth to knows her, and and she's like, I want a family session because like this is our family. This is our like weird combined like family. And it was one of the most beautiful family sessions I've ever done because it was just like, it just felt so
That's
special.
amazing. Yeah, that
Aw.
is so cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. My last question for you, Rachel, and I hope to not catch you off guard, but I like to give people who are on an opportunity to bring visibility to another photographer who they think should have more eyes and people should go check out. So, what photographer would you like to boost today? Who do you want people to go check out and gain
Um,
visibility?
yeah. So my favorite photographer right now is a friend of mine. Her name is Juliette Fredin. She's down in DC. Do you know
Well,
her?
I know Julia. Yes, Juliet took my course on building an
Oh,
associate program, and
great. Yeah.
it was a live course. So we spent
Yeah.
2 hours together every week for like 3 months. I love Juliet, and
I
she is
love
an
her.
incredible photographer. She's an incredible photographer.
She is so inspiring to me. I had we were traveling together recently and getting the chance to shoot with her and see how her mind works. I have always admired her creativity. I just think that her eye for not only her documentary photography, which I just think is so gorgeous, but the way that she plays with light and double exposures and different angles, and she just plays with photography in a way that honestly I had forgotten to do. You know, you do this for long enough and you kind of get into a rhythm of like, this is how I take the photo that my client is going to like, and this is how I get the correct exposure, and I get a sharp focus and all of that. And getting to travel with her was just such a lovely gift of like, oh, right, like I used to do this just because it was fun. and kind of finding that fun again. And so, yeah, that's why I wanted to plug Juliet today.
I will very happily link to her everything. Yeah. And if like, here's a weird side note. If you want to see what good copy on a website looks like, go to Juliet's website. And it was Rachel Greiman who did it for the Juliet. When I told Juliet, when I asked her, I was like, your website is so good and your copy is so compelling. Like, did you write? She's like, no, I hired Green Chair Stories. So Rachel Greiman, I'm like, oh, okay. I guess I really have to save money and hire Rachel. But anyway, check.
Like, what better testimonial than to find somebody's work out in the world and not realize that that's what it was and that it affects you in that way? Like, yeah, that's...
Yeah. And I had been following Rachel, for a lot. I just really like Rachel. Every time I hear her speak, I'm like, I like her. Like, I like her a lot and I like what she has to say. And then to see her work out in the wild, like I'm like, oh yeah, she's good.
I mean, obviously she's a Rachel, so, enough said, but
yes.
But yeah, I follow all of her things. I'm on her newsletter. I love her little, she does those little like 10-minute videos once a month where she'll take somebody's website and like quickly critique it. Mm-hmm. Just that quick little 10-minute video is so like, has so much knowledge and so much information.
So valuable.
So helpful, and and that's, that just brings it all back to like, we talked a lot about birth photography, but like photography as an industry can be a really lonely place if all you're seeing is competition everywhere that you look. And there's room for everybody. There's space for everybody. We only all succeed if we support each other. And so nothing makes me happier than to find somebody else in our industry who's doing amazing things. And you're like, you're doing amazing things. I love that. And it's inspiring. Like, watching Juliet's work just makes me want to play with my own stuff more. And I like, what a gift to be inspired by other creative people. I think it's just, what it comes down to.
Yes, absolutely. Hear. Yeah, totally agree with you. I love everything you had to say. This is absolutely like the most robust interview I've recorded to date.
Yeah, good luck editing this down. I can't wait to hear it.
Yes, forget my original goal. That's out the window. But you just had so much value to share with everybody, and I know this is such I have zero interest in ever becoming a birth photographer because I understand what it entails, but I have so much curiosity around it that you were able to kind of relieve for me. So thank you for that. And I'm sure you piqued the interest of many people, and I will be linking to and all of your website, but also information for anybody who wants to be mentored by you, because I can't imagine a better person to help get you into this industry if this is what you want to be doing than Rachel. So thank you so much, Rachel. I really appreciate you taking your time. And it was funny. The backstory, Rachel had emailed me a few days ago just to say like, hey, I do have a birth. And luckily the birth happened yesterday. So you're fresh off the heels. And do you have a break coming up? Is your 2-month sabbatical on the horizon?
Well, yes and no. So I'm off call now, and we actually are leaving on Tuesday for a big 2-week trip with the kids. We're going out to the Grand Tetons and Yellowstone.
Wow! That's going to be amazing.
Yeah, we're so it's been a 2 years in the making trip. We're all really excited, and this client that I was telling you about had a planned delivery at a hospital, and I just know hospitals in our area don't really love to let folks go much past 41 weeks. So that's why I knew, I was like, it's going to be sometime this week, one way or another. And that baby was so lovely to come yesterday. So now I'm off through the end of the month. And then I actually have a really busy July. I have 4 clients that I'm going to be on call for when I get home from our trip. And then potentially a little bit of a break. It's been, I mean, I came into this year not expecting to be super busy because I had so much travel planned, and it's turned out to be one of my busiest birth years yet. So
Okay.
we shall see what the future holds.
Yes. Well, thank you again. Everybody check out Rachel. She's great. Just you're a gift. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We will talk soon.
Yeah.
Bye.
This was great. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So until next time, keep shooting, keep creating, and keep building the business that supports your dreams. Have a fantastic week. And remember, in the business of photography, your creativity is your biggest asset.